You're good to go.
Great. Hello and welcome to this live social broadcast. I'm Karen Snell, and we're coming to you live from the RSA Conference in San Francisco, California. Today, we are talking about cybersecurity, the threats, the trends, and the future. And to help tackle that topic, I have with us today Cisco's John Stewart. Thank you so much for joining us.
No problem at all. It's good to see you again.
Wonderful. So before we get started in this conversation, this is truly an interactive discussion. So you can enter your comment right on the broadcast page in front of you. You can use Twitter, use the hashtag Cisco Security. We're also running this broadcast on our Facebook page as well. That's Facebook/Cisco. So let's jump into the conversation. We have about 20 minutes with John right now. So if you have a question, please post that question right away and we'll do our best to get to it. So John, we are here at one of the largest gatherings of IT security professionals in the world, and the doors are about to open in about 20 minutes or so. We're going to get this wave of people. What does that say about conferences like this that keep on growing? What does that say about the state of cybersecurity? And are people more aware? Are there more concerns?
What I'm liking about the audience this year is I'm seeing a blend of executives that are based business experience, be it CIOs, be it CFOs, be it CEOs, as well as the traditional security community that I certainly play a part in and have a lot of great colleagues in. And that to me is a really telling shift. It tells me that now we're getting really into the boardroom and it's a systemic level, and that we've actually, in some respects, still got a long way to go, because as you look even behind us and around the floor, there are so many companies here trying to solve problems. Yeah. And that tells me that we're going to have to kind of change the rules pretty soon, or it's going to hit a stretch point where we've got too many vendors involved. But the net of it is I always consider it positive when it gets bigger and better and more important and the audience changes.
So let's talk about, like, over the last 4 or 5 years, have the threats changed or have the same ones increased?
Yes and yes. I'd wish that we could sort of contain one before we have to move on to the next one. But we had the rise of something in the last few years which has been very different, which is this idea of destructive power. And then a secondary one where it was the rise of hacktivism. You didn't even know necessarily why you were guilty about whatever happened to you, but all of a sudden you were guilty because of something happening to you. Examples of this happened in the last week, where a particular news journal ended up doing a particular interview on a very controversial figure, and all of a sudden they're getting hit as hard as you can get hit. So there's a really interesting detente, but at the same time, then we have these new problems that are going up, and then we never get away from the old ones. Patch your computer antivirus, the latest, funny bunny virus still lives, it doesn't die ever completely. And then what is old becomes new again, DDoS threats. We sort of got off that trail, and then now it's massive DDoS hitting against the bank structure. So I don't know if that's good job security or we're not solving any problem completely. I don't know which one to take it as, but they're all seeming to happen, and we're still getting more.
So, is there, any realistic hope that the good guys can turn things around when it comes to cybersecurity?
Yeah, I never underestimate us. We're a fairly resilient bunch, and that's also shown by the number of us that are still here, still working our jobs, and still trying to make the changes. And then number two is, again, back to that change of audience, I'm seeing more and more law enforcement here working with people that, it's almost funny to see us together. Hey, you got the ponytail guy right next to the guy with a gun and a badge. And then the senior executives along with their security people are in the same room. All that tells me that we've hit a turning point, which is enough, and we're beginning to figure out how to work together to make it better.
So you even can see that in the list of speakers at this year's RSA, a real mix of, you've got Secret Service coming to speak, right. Condoleezza Rice, Ben Cerf, yep. Our own, Chris Young, yep. As well. So quite a lineup of speakers here at RSA.
And all walks of life.
Exactly,
yep.
From all different types of industries. Well, it looks like our espresso machine is getting cleaned right here, right in the middle of this broadcast. It's fabulous. This is all real time.
Never interrupt the coffee guy.
Exactly.
That or the bartender, you want to let them keep going as soon as they can.
Priorities. So with the changes in cybersecurity, you just listed off a whole bunch of concerns and threats and trends. It's overwhelming, to say the least. Is there reason to be optimistic?
Yeah, it's and the thing that I think is the turning point always here. Look, if nothing else, We have to take on it on our shoulders that each and every time we get together, we get a little better about how we share practices that we do with each other that work. We also are meeting the multiplicity of the community partners of law enforcement, like you're saying, they're law enforcement, research scientists, professional companies, etc. And hey, I think there's a reason this conference exists, and it's because we are working the problems. They're hard ones. They're getting harder sometimes than they're getting easier. I don't see anybody trying to just give up and walk away. We're going to have to figure this out. I mean, it's a billion people, essentially connected, and the rapidly growing addition of peopleless devices that are the Internet of Everything essentially means that we have to solve it today. Mm-hmm. We got to get better at it today. We got to get ahead of the curve today, because tomorrow's also on top of us. A year from now, we're going to be having a broadcast at RSA 2014, mm-hmm. and we're going to have that many more computers, that many more operating systems, and new threats to talk about. So it's hard work. I don't think anybody here is sort of against hard work.
Sure, exactly. So, what kind of products? What is Cisco doing for this next generation when we talk about the issues that are facing IT professionals in the area of security?
So number one, if you think about 40% of the network security market, it's the largest concentration of network security that exists in one company. That's us. Mm-hmm. So part one is we're innovating in our core. And we've done some in the past, we're doing some in the future. ASA CX last year, ASA 9 last year, virtualization of all our appliances into virtual form factors, the integration and creation of ICE, of which 1.2 is just announced short time ago, where now we're getting innovation in policy and identity. We're increasing the amount of trustworthiness of our products, and that, by the way, is a really critical aspect of what vendors are all going to have to do, and I would argue that we're definitely on the leading edge in that respect. So the innovation side of us, the hard work side of us is there, and then product innovation is happening too. Part two is we're back in that sort of acquisition partnership world. We just bought Cognitive, which is an incredibly innovation analytics thinking process where they're taking game theory and essentially applying it to network security problems. That's going to help local contextual information on networks tie up to global information grids that we run every day. This is what I know means we're getting it right. Now we're starting to see competitors take shots at us. And we haven't seen that in a while. Mm-hmm. I like that. That's a good early indicator that we've got something right. So they're all starting to pre-position how, it's better than, or it's better than, or better than. It's like, okay, bring it on. This means we're on to something. We've got and we're getting our wind in our sails, and look out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We've got a question coming in here from Twitter. What are the most interesting or unique new threats or attacks you've seen recently?
So I've seen two particular classes of attacks, and then I'll talk about one type of technological attack. So the first one, and I don't necessarily consider this a good thing, is destructive power. I made a reference to this a minute ago. A number of companies have made the news in which no longer is it about infectious sort of malware, but it's true destructive systems that have destroyed infrastructure, destroyed computing infrastructure, or disrupted whole business operations. That wasn't really where we used to be just only but a few years ago. And it's got a downstream side effect of very sophisticated people obviously had to build it. Now the weaponization of it is starting to exist beyond those sophisticated people, which means more and more sort of hacking community members can use it. Mm-hmm. That's not necessarily a great development, but it is new. The second thing I've noticed is where we're working back to where old is new again. So DDoS threats, but also combined with malware injection at the same time. I'll look over here while you're paying attention to this security problem. I'm going to go over here. That's not necessarily a great development either, but it totally better change the thinking of most security professionals. And on the technological side, what I think I'm starting to observe is the latest advance in how you're doing in-memory threats, mm-hmm. where you're no longer putting anything on software, nothing on disk. It literally resides only in memory for as long as it can reside there. It's very difficult to see as a result, because you're not scanning anything.
Right.
And all the other applications and techniques that we've used in the past don't necessarily apply.
That's a lot. I mean, these are things that are keeping everybody very busy, and I would imagine keep a lot of people up late at night.
Absolutely. There's two solutions to that: work on it or worry about it. Mm-hmm. I'm in the former category, even if I do worry about things. Mm-hmm. But it's not as if, even looking around here, the world hasn't stopped, right? I mean, we're still generally in a place as a globe. Yeah, we've got our little issues in both economies and certainly tough situations in some places. But net of it is, it hasn't stopped. We're not in doomsday world here. And that, by the way, is a caution to every vendor in the world. We should not be talking about doomsday. We should be talking about problem solution and how to make it easier and do it better. Those are the simple aspects that everyone wants to hear. I don't want to scare anybody anymore. Let's get pragmatic. You know, the whole place is doing just fine.
Right.
We've just got to start working the problems, both socially as well as technologically, and knock them out one by one.
I just want to remind those who are watching us to send us your questions. You can use the hashtag Cisco Security on Twitter, or you can put your question right in the broadcast page, and we'll take a look at it. We'll ask John. We'll get that answered real time. And again, this broadcast will be recorded right afterwards. So if you're catching us just at the tail end of our broadcast, you can go ahead and go back and listen to it. If you have a question, go ahead and ask us. Hashtag Cisco Cisco Security, or right there in the broadcast page. So.
Isn't that cool? We're a security company that's on Twitter and Facebook. You know, that's kind of something that's different.
Yeah,
right?
No, it's good.
Use
it's
social
good.
media to your advantage, including what we're doing here in Google Hangouts.
Sure. I'm glad we can have this conversation, and
Me too.
I think it's a wonderful forum to have a discussion about this. So BYOD, bring your own device, is obviously not anything new, but a very big concern for IT security professionals. I remember when we talked back in December, early December, late November, going into the holiday season, and we were talking about when you get that new device under the tree or during the holiday season, you bring it into work, that's when the IT professionals go, exactly. So, what is it, how does how has that evolved? Obviously, the discussion's been there for quite some time, but where are the biggest concerns? How is that being addressed today?
The first thing I think is important to note is this is just round one of what's going to be a couple round fight. BYOD, or bring your own machine, or however it's been described in multiple places, is an early warning indicator of our future, and in a good way, but also in a warning way that we got to take fairly seriously. So we keep talking about it as if, you're bringing your new Samsung device in, you're bringing your new Apple device in. On the other hand, I think we've also got to remember that every conference you go to, so Mobile World Congress is happening right now, somewhat ironically, over across the other half of the globe. And there are other IT conferences that are going to be happening that all talk about security and talk about connectivity and talk about IT. In a totally different aspect, you've got the latest kitchen technology, the latest home automation systems, the latest audio conferences, and all of those are talking about security and how do you connect it via IT. So every industry is becoming an IT industry. So it's not just about bring your own device. It's not just about I got a new phone, or I got a new iPad, or I got a new latest widget. It's also all the other things that we're putting on networks. So that early indicator is now about how do you take a multiplicity of connected devices of different kinds, different configurations, different operating systems, different security capabilities, and protect against the threats. My observation, there's only one thing in common with all of them. It's not vendor, it's not the operating system, it's not the application, and it's not the security strength. It's the network that connects them all. Part of the reason I came back here 10 years ago, it's a natural place, if not the only place left, to put consistent security across all of those vendors, all those connected devices, and all of those increasingly connected devices that don't have people involved. I had a really startling discussion not later than last year, in September, in which I learned that one of the largest service providers is putting 3 devices for every one, 3 devices that have nobody connected to it whatsoever on their 4G LTE network. So every person that adds a new phone, they've got 3 other devices being added to it that are just communicating. That's craziness. Yeah. And that means we've hit a tipping point, but that early indicator of BYOD is now also every device, all touch panels, all the screens we have here at the show, all those are IP addressable. That's the next part of this. That's why, in fact, I think Cisco's got such a great shot.
Some useful insight, definitely, around the BYOD trend, for sure. We have another question now from Facebook.
Okay.
Are you seeing increasing collaboration and intelligence sharing between the public and private sectors?
Absolutely. And, partly that's necessary to get after some of the really hard problems. We've been doing information sharing and already in many respects that we forget to acknowledge. So, for example, all the computers that are participating in 40 to 50 terabytes of consumed data that's coming into Cisco's grid essentially have been participating. These devices have been participating on telling stuff with telemetry and enforcing stuff based on what we learn about the threat. So that's collaboration. It's just machine collaboration versus people collaboration. But this conference is showing about collaboration. You said it yourself. We've got the Secret Service, we've got the FBI, we've got the intelligence community, we have international community partners, we've got companies, and they're all walking around like they've all known each other, talking about work, talking about roles. So that information sharing about experience, I think, has really taken a large leap in the last couple of years, and I'm thrilled to see it. And it was funny, I was at a well, they call it bar last night, and it was like very cool law enforcement people, very cool technologists, and very cool investors, and all of them were talking to each other. And we used to all sort of go no, and they used to all sort of go no, and now it's like we're one big group, because in fact we are.
That's awesome. That's an awesome anecdote, just to the power of collaboration in terms of the sharing best practices and what folks are actually doing in the different industries. Great question. Thank you so much. Another one from Twitter. How can proactive threat intelligence help secure businesses? What is Cisco doing with threat intelligence?
Thanks for the question. So proactive, let me talk about threat intelligence and then trying to get ahead of a curve to be pre-predictive. So threat intelligence itself, and I've said this for the last few years, and Cisco's been doing it for about 6. When I see the data in my network, which we do, that gives me part of a picture of a globe. I need to have that combined with other data points, and so you get that 3D effect. I don't get the 2D, I get the 3D, I get the rich, I get the high def. And it's because all of the companies are sharing about what their experiences are electronically. That's telemetry coming into us, and then the knowledge going out. So that's part of what threat intelligence is right out the gate, is us all working together at machine speed in order to detect threat and mitigate threat. Then the second part of that is, how do you get predictive? Part of the reason we actually brought cognitive. They're working towards seeing early indicators of activity so you can get pre-predictive that something's going wrong versus has gone wrong. And that's a big, big leap. It's not trivial. It takes a lot of brains, which is why most of cognitive is sort of jump out of education. Then it takes a lot of hard, sophisticated work to get right. So if I actually think you're walking left and you decide to walk right, well, computers better do the right thing too. I better not be wrong, because I could shut off the service when in fact you want me to enable the service. And if we don't want to get that part wrong, it's also part of the reason we're investing.
Wonderful. Another great question. We have time for 1 or 2 questions. We're running up on our time here with John, and as I mentioned earlier, the doors to the conference are about to open, and we're kind of situated right at the front of the
ground zero.
floor. So this wave of people is going to be.
By the way, that wasn't by accident. Always be right by the door. That's, get the most people to buy, right?
Location. Okay. All right. So here we have one from Twitter. How secure is cloud computing? Should we be concerned putting critical data in the cloud?
2 different questions. I would argue that the answer, no matter what the form is, you should always be worried about putting critical data anywhere. It starts off with that basic premise. And then the second part of, or really the first part, which is cloud security, cloud services secure, depends on which one. But what I would offer up is you have an opportunity as customers of those cloud services, just like we do, to push the envelope, demand it. Say, what do you, prove it to me. Don't just write it in contractual language, show me. Because show me the show me, don't tell me process about security tells you actually got it. Are they part of the cloud security alliance? Are they actually implementing security controls that are separated? Encryption on the data stores, transit encryption. All of those things are questions to ask your cloud service provider. That's how they get better. They listen to you. We listen to you. We're the customer, so we get to actually tell them what they need, and they got to show us that they actually did it.
Great. We're going to take our final question before wrapping up here. This one is from Facebook. It's from David on Facebook. There seems to be a disparity between regulated industries and consumerization trends. Do the regulations need to evolve, or solutions to support these interconnected devices?
Yeah, it's the rule. It's the problem of technology changing faster than rules apply, and I feel for a lot of regulated industries, because I don't believe that there's really a very, very easy framework to say I will change the regulation at the same time technology is changing. And at the same time, those regulated industries very oftentimes are trying to use the brand new technology to evolve their business. It's a real quandary to get caught into. Here's where I think is probably an opportunity. And you were talking a little bit about the collaboration question around between law enforcement and companies. I throw this up as, how do governments and companies work together to make it easier to do business in a regulated world, yet still maintain the regulations needs, which is to assure that whatever infrastructure company or whatever regulated corporation you are, that they're doing the right thing no matter what. Really, really hard to do. It takes energy. And it's part of the reason we actually spend so much time in Washington with governments around the globe, is to help them actually work through this. It's not going to be the simplest thing we're going to do, but again, it's hard work. Hey, put the shoulder into it. Let's do it.
Wonderful. John Stewart, Chief Security Officer at Cisco, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today here at the RSA Conference, live from San Francisco, California. And thank you for joining in the conversation. You can follow more of the discussion around Cisco security by following the Twitter handle at Cisco Security. They also have a blog. I think we have a graphic that can tell you where you can find that blog as well. Lots of information there on an ongoing basis. We look forward to seeing you on our next broadcast. Again, thank you so much for joining us.